Honest J. Nowak. Oh yeah.
A pleasure to meet y'all at last, and welcome back to Honest J. Nowak. Now here on Honest J. Nowak, let me go ahead and explain a few things based on Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. Now, of course I just made the quotation gesture because I cannot really do a whole lot of justice on this. But it seems that people out there are just unaware of the fact that evolution does exist. And the so-called theory about it is that, well, it does talk about a few primates that we're basically descendants of. Most of the types of people out there that aren't really aware of the fact that there are people of all sorts out there whom have had a lot of evolutionary traits about them. And I could tell for sure that I might as well just have some evolutionary factors from within the next 100 years. Part of the reason for that is being the fact that I'm able to take a lot more pain and damage. I'm able to endure much higher or colder temperatures. I'm able to run a bit faster than the average person out there. Even though the fastest person out there in existence, well, that dude's just absolutely great. But the truth is that aside from all of the more powerful abilities that I got in comparison to others, it seems to be a reason that I'm just living proof of the evolution of humanity within the next couple of centuries. Now that in general is so far-fetched, anyone out there just might think I'm crazy, but I've already done many things to prove it to them. For the fact that I was able to test my temperature tolerances, which is way higher or lower than the average. The coldest temperature I was able to endure was negative 55. And this was in turn because of a time last January where it got as cold as negative 55 degrees. I mean, who would be able to endure that? Apparently, that's in my case. I was able to endure that for minutes upon minutes. And it was too bad it was only one time because I didn't have a whole lot of data to record on that behalf. But in terms of hotter temperatures, I could do a little bit more justice on that behalf because as high up as 152 degrees, that was as high as I was able to take it up to without hurting my hand in general. I just basically had a Bunsen burner and a large jar of water, stuck my hand in there, slowly turned up the temperature, and as soon as I got past 155, that was where it became somewhat discomfortable for me. And if I continued to go anymore, then it would be scalding. So that right there is just where I drew the line and stopped. Now in terms of pain factors, I mean, I was really able to endure a lot. And anyone could tell that the Joker was able to be a really good pain taker. But it seems that in my history, my entire lifespan so far, I was really able to take on as much pain as possible. Like I've had dozens of muscles becoming sore all at once. Some have torn, some have just, contracted so bad that it probably would have been really horrible for me. But the truth is, it didn't really feel like much. And in terms of, cuts and the like, I've taken on tens of thousands of them. At one point, though, was where it got really serious. Just some walks through some brambles and the like, and huge amounts of spiny type plants and vines was able to put a lot of cuts in my body, and I mean a lot. It was to the point where there was a lot of blood in most parts of the body. I did have to have a lot of cotton balls and the like applied to some areas where some parts were bleeding, but for the most part, about 5/6 of all the cuts I had in my body, they were basically just flesh wounds. But this in general just led me to conclude that at that point, I was able to endure Ling Chi, Death of 1,000 Cuts, which is basically a series of small incisions through the skin. They could be flesh wounds or they can go down to as far as a certain vessel, but of course, it would also lead to a point where certain parts of the body, like the fingers, toes, ears, and others, would get chopped off the body. But the 1000th cut would be just a stab to the chest. However, in my case, it wasn't Ling Chi in general. It was another type of Ling Chi where I basically just had other cuts that did not involve any parts of my body getting chopped off. So, I guess it's just another part about it, but one last thing that stands out from all the rest is the fact that I'm able to really gain knowledge of all sorts. The fact that I'm able to be a whole lot smarter, a lot better of a pain taker, and a lot more tolerable from different temperature ranges, those three things right there are just evidence of all sorts. 3 pieces of evidence that I am living evolution. Anyone out there might think that I'm just straight up insane talking to the camera, but these stories of mine, they're all true. I've endured cuts, all that sort. I've gotten through temperatures of those sorts, and even to this very day, I happen to be smarter than even some of the biggest geniuses out there that we've had in history. But of course, there's really not a lot of evidence I have to tie up to that because of a certain accident that occurred at that point years ago. So, I guess that's just all I got to talk about that thing right there. But if you want to see more, go down to my channel. Make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.